Hello, everybody. Today, I know we've been doing a lot of CSS lately, but I have a conference next week. I'm going to be speaking at TDEB, and I haven't made my slide deck yet for my because I have a new talk I'm going to be giving for the conference. And so I figured that instead of going over CSS this week, what we were going to do is kind of work through this slide deck together. Something just kind of change it up a little bit, do something a little bit different. So the name of this talk that we're going to be building the deck for is called Baking My Cake and Eating It Too. And the concept behind it is essentially the fact that baking and development realistically have a lot of similarities. If you really look down to the process of going through baking and the process of going from, we have this idea, we want to build an application, what are we going to do next, are really, really similar. So that's what the talk is going to do. So right now, what I have is just a blank slide deck, and we're going to deck it out and we're going to get started. And I probably will finish it offline because the conference is next week and I know I'm not going to get it done in an hour, but at least you'll be able to see kind of what my process is generally when I go and build a slide deck. So this one's going to be a little bit different. Historically, what I'll generally do is take up the company branding. I work for Andromeda Galactic Solutions, and so I'll take the company branded slide deck and I'll just do that, and then I go ahead and put the pieces together. But I think with all of our theme for Andromeda Galactic, with the whole space in the name, we do a lot of space themed things, even in our deck and everything. But with cooking and baking, I figured it doesn't really work all that well, so we're going to deviate a little bit from that. I am going to pull in the main theme, but we're probably going to edit it just a tad to make it more related to cooking. So I have a brand new deck, clean deck, as you can see, just standard, not even any particular theme applied, just the default. I generally use Google Slides because I like the fact that I can then publish them pretty easily on my website, martine.dev. You'll see I have a number of my slide decks published out there, but also because it's backed up online, which means that if my computer decides to die at a conference, I can hop on anybody else's computer and I still have my deck for my presentation, because there's nothing worse than ending up in that situation at a conference when you're trying to present. So I'm going to go ahead and take the theme, and let's go ahead and pull in my company theme, and then we're going to go from there. So I'm going to do edit theme. And nope, that's not the one I wanted. I want themes. Import. We're going to do, what is it under? Insert theme? No. I'm going to close this. Theme. There we go. Theme. That theme. And I'm going to do import theme. And I'm going to pick it from a presentation that I've used before. We're just going to take the last presentation that I did. I'm going to import the theme. It's only got one in there, which is what I expect to see. And there we go. We have our theme, and we've got our first, kind of first slide, and we're going to go ahead and put our title, which is Baking My Cake and Eating It Too. Kind of a long title. We may have to edit that just a tad. Shrink text, nope. And then we're going to take the subtitle, which is what baking taught me about development. Copy that and slide that in there. There we go. Okay. So now we need to start building some artifacts about baking and about cooking and about cake. We're also going to probably talk about bread because, quarantine and all, we've had bread things. So first thing I think I'm going to do is we're going to make a graphic for a cake. So with my graphics, I always make them in Illustrator because I find that's the most versatile thing, because resizing and all that fun stuff, if I'm making a custom graphic, the likelihood of it being in Illustrator is pretty high. So I think I'm going to start with making a cupcake, because who doesn't love cupcakes? Because we're going to need a bunch of different types of cakes for this thing. So I'm going to make our cupcake holder. And we're going to bring this in. We're going to bring this in. I'm not on my usual rig, so I'm kind of, my keyboard's not exactly the same, so my keyboard shortcuts aren't quite in the same place. And then we're going to make a cupcake, a nice round cupcake. So we're going to use an ellipse. We're going to make a cupcake. And now we're going to have to shape this, right? Because right now we're not exactly looking quite like a cupcake, but I like blocking things out before I go and really shape them, because that kind of gives me the idea of the structure of my graphic. I'm going to bring it forward. Most people have kind of their own way of doing things. This is just mine. It doesn't mean that any way is correct or incorrect. That's just my way of doing things. I'm going to take, we're going to add some points on here so that we can give this a little bit of dimension. I'm going to give it, you know how the little cupcake cup things have the little swooshes in there? So if I take this now, I can start giving it some dimension. And I do, and I'm not gonna, I don't want them to all be in the exact same height, because that's gonna give it that curve, right? What we're trying to achieve is a little bit of curve to give it some dimension and perspective. Bring that down. Okay, now we're starting to have a little bit more of a cupcake feel. Now, I'm also gonna curve my corners just a little bit, because that is very, very square. And we'll do that. Actually, let me curve this bottom part first. So I'm going to do, because when is a cupcake that geometrically perfect? So by making it rounded on the bottom, now I've given it kind of that idea of a curve, right? That it's actually circular, and it gives it, it's less flat. So now we're going to bring our cupcake to the front and bring it back on top. So these notches may or may not be seen once we have it on top, and that's okay. But that in case they bleed kind of on top, they'll be there. So I'm going to bring this forward. Bring this to the front. There we go. And now we got to shape this into a cupcake. So to shape this into a cupcake, generally our cupcakes are, and so now we have to get this to kind of give the, if we think of a cupcake shape, let me go back to the web and let's look up some cupcake shapes. So if I type in cupcake and we look at some pictures, images. No, I don't want to go buy cupcakes. Oh, that does sound lovely, right? A lot of times what you get is you get that, if I'm looking at some legitimate pictures of cupcakes, right? You'll get that the little, some of them kind of fit in, but a lot of them kind of bleed over a little bit, mostly due to the frosting, right? Or, ooh, these are cute little monster cupcakes. Oh, this is making me hungry. Anyway, so now we got to get, you know, that kind of shape going with our, the top part. I'm not going to call it a muffin, but you get the idea. So we got to shape this guy. So I'm going to do, to kind of get the layers you would get from icing, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple ellipses on top. I think kind of snow cone-ish almost. This is kind of low for our cupcake. What I may do, actually we'll bring this, give this one a second. I'm going to make a square. This is going to be the base of our cake. Bring it in, same width, there we go. I'm going to bring this forward. Now we're going to add icing. Bring this forward. We have one layer of icing. Smaller layer of icing. And smaller layer of icing. And now we're going to merge all these and we're going to finish shaping and bring our cup thing back to the front. And now we're going to finish, we can adjust how high it goes. And we're going to finish, we've got a little bit of overlap there. So we'll want to bring this in a little bit. And I can do that simply by going like this. It makes for an interesting shape behind it, but we don't really care. And now we can do like this. Needs to be more of a, maybe a poopy, like a little top that's more of a like little pointy bit that you might see at the top of a cupcake. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this guy, pull it in. There we go. Now we're starting to look like something. And then we're gonna add some lines inside. I'm gonna add a curve here to give that, you know, that layering and that depth. Escape. Thank you. Give it that curve. And now we've got something that's starting to look a little bit more like a cupcake. And I can pull, oops, wrong one. I can take this and I can pull to kind of adjust that. Almost looks like a snow cone. I'll bring it in just a tad. I'm going to zoom in. We're going to adjust these to fit on the line. There we go. On the line. I've got some white going on. Oh, there, that's what good. That'll help. Same with this guy. I'm assuming it's, yeah. I'm going to adjust you just a tad. Adjust you just a tad. And our final one. Come on. Which is back to this guy. Gonna go from here to here, and now we just adjust our ends. There we go. And adjust that end. There we go. And now we can start coloring it. Oh, I do want to go ahead and give the striations on the cupcake bottom. We still have this cupcake bottom, right? So we want to go ahead and give that some striations. And now notice I'm not making these straight, and that's because our bottom is curved, right? So if I were to make them straight, it would mess with our perspective. And up and give it a line. Give that a line. And so now I'm starting to curve in the other way because we're on the other side of the curve from where the middle is. Now I can take this bottom part and I can color it based on our cupcake. Let's see, this is our cupcake bottom. And now we got to color our cake. Now this is all in one piece, right? I've put lines in. And so if I want my cake part and my frosting bit to be two different colors, we're going to have to, we have kind of two options. One, I can make a container over here, right? That's this shape. Or I can take or I can do a live paint. So let's see what if this will work with live paint because it's easier than chopping it up. Otherwise, we will just we'll just separate these out into individual pieces. So if I go into our object and I say live paint and I say make, yeah, we know. Okay. So now it's separated it out. So I can start taking my paint tool, which is over here somewhere. Nope, wrong one. I can never remember where this is because I don't do it very often. There we go. Live bucket paint tool. And then I can select a color. So let's say we want purple frosting. And then I can go back and now we can color this in paint purple. And then maybe I want some slightly different purple. This is starting to be very, very purple. And then a darker purple. And then underneath here, we have our actual cake, right? So I'm going to take my yellow, and that's our actual cake. And now I can take our cupcake, again, our cupcake topper part, and I can bring that back to the front. We can bring that back to the front. Oh, we lost our lines. I'm going to take our lines. I'm going to group them with our bottom. Group them and bring them to the front. Okay, so we don't have a lot of contrast with the colors I've picked, so let's go ahead and fix that just a little bit. Let's change our colors because this is not very contrasted at all. So if I take our live paint tool again, and go back to our live paint tool, and I'm going to pick a color. Even if I pick, say if I pick our, let's start with this one of our brand colors, and let's go ahead and lighten it a lot. See if that works better. That's actually a lot nicer. Okay, so now we have something that's starting to look a lot more like a cupcake. I'll bring this just a tad. So we kind of see the cake, but we mostly have the frosting. Okay. Now let's put some sparkles on it. Like, because what's a cake without sprinkles? So I'm going to make a bunch of these, and let's pick a color right away. That way I don't have to go back and recolor them all. So I'm going to take my line color over here, and I'm going to go ahead and set my line color. I'm going to use one of my brand colors. I'm going to we're going to start with some yellow, and we're going to give it some sprinkles. Oh, that didn't work. Said we're going to pick some yellow. Can we pick some yellow? Does it added it? It's added it. Give me yellow. There we go. Now we're going to make some sprinkles. Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle. And actually, these would be even nicer if my edges were curved. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do curved ends, because that way, if we see when I make my line, if I zoom in, now instead of having square ends, I have curved ends at the end. So I can make some much nicer sprinkles that way. So let's delete that because that's a little big. And we're going to make some sprinkles. Sprinkle, 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 all over the place. Because we can't have cupcakes without sprinkles. So let's change colors. We've got a bunch of yellow sprinkles. Let's add maybe some pink sprinkles. How about some pink? Let's do, yeah, this pink is fine. Pink sprinkles. All the places. Okay. And how about one more color? Let's do some white sprinkles. There's such a thing as white sprinkles. Oop, that's gray. That's not actually white. That's white. Now we've got some white sprinkles. Okay. Okay, we have sprinkles of all different shapes and sizes. Could use a couple here. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is see how, now that I'm zoomed in, see how these edges and these edges don't match up very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say release. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm not going to release it. I am, however, going to edit this line to come and intersect. So what I want to do is I want these two things right here to go ahead and join them, and I think it will let me join. It will not let me join. Will it let me? No, probably won't let me. Compound isn't going to help. I want to get this line to be a little bit more over here onto this. There you go. That's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. These are for presentation, so they're never going to get zoomed in quite. You know, nobody's going to be particularly scrutinizing them that closely, but I still want them to be clean in case, you know, they ever get used for something else. Don't want to have to go in and, you know, future me will thank me for doing this right now. These two. I wish it would let me. I know there's a way to do this, but I don't remember what it is at the moment. There we go. Well, it's not strictly necessary, so I'm not going to worry about it. If this was for a logo, I'd go look it up, but right now, this is good enough. All right, so we have a cupcake. A pretty cupcake. What are some other types of sweets we should do? So I'm going to go ahead and group that and save it. And we're going to make a second artboard. So this is Mr. Cupcake. And we're going to make a new art. We can just keep working on the same artboard. I think it'll be fine. We missed a sprinkle. And I moved everybody. There we go. And so now, as you can see, I can shrink, I can expand. It works great. I think the last thing I want to do, actually, before we move on and make a different suite, if you guys also have when you yes, I do want to do it correctly the first time. When these lines are actually pure black, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change them to not pure black, because the problem with pure black is it really kills your contrast a lot. And so I'm going to use the same blue. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit darker blue. I'm going to use that blue that we used in the a similar blue that we used in the bottom in the cupcake, because that way what will happen is we will end up with things that work pretty well together. But see, automatically just me changing from black to dark blue, even though most people will interpret it as black, it gave some of the depth right back to it. It doesn't flatten it as badly. Cool. So we have a cupcake. We're going to need a couple other cakes because, again, we're comparing it to baking, and I'm not. At some points, we're going to talk about bread. At some points, we're going to talk about cake. At some point, we're going to talk, obviously, cupcakes. So let's do a loaf of bread. Now, the thing with the loaf of bread is it can easily look like a blob. So I think we're going to go for traditional sandwich bread because I think that's a shape a lot of people can relate to. And all traditional sandwich bread really is a kind of the square at the bottom, and then where the bread has risen on top, you get this kind of oblong-y kind of shape on top. And we pretty much from there end up with something that vaguely looks like a loaf. So I'm going to go ahead and merge these two things. And now that I've merged these two things, we can kind of adjust the shape because that looks more like a keyhole than a loaf of bread at the moment. Very weird keyhole. We have our bread here. And then we can give it kind of that off. And bread is never exactly perfect. There you go. And then we're going to adjust these to be a little bit more, curve in our bits. There we go. There we go. What does a bread key look like? I don't know. Is it the key to like figuring out how to make it rise the exact same way every bloody time? Because if somebody's figured out that magic, I want to know. And then we're going to give it color, because most of what's going to give us this one looking vaguely like bread is going to be the color. This one I'm not going to give an outline to. And we're going to give it a little bit of maybe some shadow or some, yeah, we're going to give it a shadow. So to give it a little bit of a shadow, I'm going to go here, and go here. I'm going to vaguely trace that shape. We're going to take our line color and we're going to change that line color below to just a hint darker than what we use. So I used this brown here, so we're going to go a hint darker. Our stroke already is going to have our curved edge. I'm going to make it a little bit, there you go. I'm going to rotate that just a tad. And now we have our, I'm going to make another little bit of a shadow right here. I don't like that. I'm going to make it straight and then curve it. There we go. Escape. I'm going to take these, go back to my arrow tool, and then I'll go ahead and curve that. I like that better. So we now have kind of a bread looking thing. I'm going to adjust that curve just a tad bit more. It's very good bread looking, vaguely. So we have our Wonder Bread. We have our Wonder Bread. Maybe we can do a baguette. I haven't, you know, maybe that'd be more bread looking. I don't know. We have a baguette. So to make that more baguette-like, and take it, give it more of a baguette shape. Tastes better anyway. No, my keyboard shortcuts aren't working for me. There we go. It'll give me Q because it's kind of, it's flat underneath, but curvy on top. There we go. And A. Curve that. Curve that. I'm going to get rid of that outline, especially since it's incredibly pronounced. I mean, I could just decrease it. We're going to get rid of the outline. And then we're going to give that striation you often get on top of bread. That are the knife cut marks that you put in. Ooh, donuts. We should do a donut. Now I'm craving a croissant. Oh yeah, croissants are delicious. My favorite are the ones with the chocolate. I'm gonna have to find a way to incorporate chocolate in this talk. I really hope they don't put me like way far off. Like, I need to look at what time I'm speaking, because this may just be evil depending on the speaking schedule versus the lunch schedule. Although it is an online and remote conference, so I guess you can be snacking while you're watching. There's no reason you can't do that. Okay, so we got these. We're going to add a stroke. Give our bread a stroke. And give our curved edges. All right. And now we're going to curve these, right? Because these are very, very straight. I'm going to zoom in because why am I working so tiny when I don't have to? We're going to curve these. I think I'm going to curve the other direction. I'm going to curve from here. We're going to curve. We have ourselves a curve. There, yeah. And then this one, we're gonna curve, curve, curve. That one can stay, yeah, we'll curve it. There's very few straight lines in the real world. And we're gonna curve. And we're gonna curve. Curve, curve, curve. And this one's going the wrong direction. It needs to curve the other direction. There we go. Okay. What did I do? There we go. That's not a very nice curve. All right. We have baguette, we have Wonder Bread, we have a cupcake. Let's go back for some colors. We had some suggestion about donuts, and I wholeheartedly agree because this is so much more colorful and visually appealing than these two. So we'll have to, maybe I'll get some actual pictures of bread or something that might be more visually interesting. We'll see. Donut. So to make a donut, I can go for the top-down view. I can also go for a more 3D view. So if we're gonna make a donut, let's pick some shiny colors. For now, I'm just gonna work in this generic gray and we'll go from there. So we have a donut is essentially a cylinder. And you'll see what I mean here in just a second. So we have these two pieces. I'm gonna make this one a different color. And now what we need to do is we need to get the edge of our donut from here to here, yeah. So I'm gonna take a line and then go line. Actually, I'm gonna line these first. And take these, we're gonna kind of, there we go, we're gonna match them up first. Then we're going to take our, we're gonna line them up, and then we're gonna line them up. Now we have the beginnings of something. So now I'm gonna take these two, because I want only part of this, because see, over here, we want the inside of our donut, right? So we have the inner hole, we have the donut hole, because this is not complete till we have a donut hole in the middle of our donut. So over here we have a hole, and now underneath we're gonna have to have the same hole. So I'm gonna take these, I'm gonna take this one, and I'm gonna line it up. Let's see if our lines are still lining up on the sides. Not quite, I have it lower down. I think we'll line up the lines, it'll be easier. There'll be a fat donut. That's a really fat donut. I'm gonna actually give like some color to these lines, because you know, seeing what you're doing is overrated, right? These guys don't need that. All right. This goes to our edge over here. You, I want you to our edge here. You, I want you to our edge here. Are these not lined up? No, they're lined up. Over here. Over here. Now we have, if I take a look at what we have, we're starting to look good. So now I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to cross section everything. So now what we have is essentially, see how I have pieces? So I can start adding and removing things based on those pieces. The last piece we want to do is our actual donut edges. We have a center part, right? This is not lined up. Something is wonky. Delete. center all of this. Something is up. There we go. Are we centered now? Yeah. So now I'm going to take this rectangle. And that is the center of our donut. That is still a very, very wide donut. All right. Now we're going to take everything and make pieces. Now that I have all these pieces, I'm going to ungroup them. We only need some of them. We definitely don't want that one. This is part of our hole. We don't see the hole at the bottom. This is, so these two, that all stays kind of the same. That. Now I want to keep this top part. So see this part of our top, this is part of the top of our donut. This is part of the top of our donut. So this I'm going to rejoin as one group. And then this is also, we have a teeny tiny part right here. So that is the top of our donut. This is the center of our donut. We want to reclaim that. And that is this part that goes together. You. The you. All that gets grouped. So now we have our center part, we have our top part, and we have that bottom curve. So we're starting to look like a donut. And I can even squish this if I want to. So now we got to give our donut frosting, right? Actually, let's give our donut a legit donut color. Let's start with that. So let's see. What color is a donut? Kind of palish. There we go, maybe. And now we got to give it some frosting. What color frosting? Fried cylinder slice. Oh yes, fried cylinder slices for the win. So we're going to give that some, what color icing do we want? Get some blue icing. I'm going to shrink just a tad. And now that center hole is exactly what you would think. It's a center hole. So I'm going to give it a gradient. We're going to adjust that gradient because I want to make it seem like it's going down into our donut. So to make it look like it's going down into our donut, we're going to do a linear gradient. And I'm then going to rotate that gradient 90 degrees. And then bring it up to, from the top to the bottom. I'm going to shrink this gradient a lot. So it's going to start here, it's going to end here. And so we're going to start lighter and get darker. So this is going to start very similar to our blue. We're going to get that hint of blue, right? So I'm going to go and we're going to end incredibly dark, almost into the black, right? Because of shadows. So I'm going to take that very dark. And so now we start getting that feeling of depth a little bit. This isn't still incredibly harsh lines, right? This is not what a donut looks like. So now we get to have fun. We have our basic shape. We need to get this curved, right? And we need to go ahead and make it work well. So, we want a chocolate donut. Yeah, we'll probably do that. And then, problem with chocolate, with graphics, is brown. Like the brown you get on chocolate very easily looks like poo, like literal poo. And I don't know about anybody else, but nobody wants poo. So now that we have an edge, because glazing is never quite perfect, I can go ahead and make that blue. Now you notice that now all of a sudden I have this blue coming over my hole. So I need to bring my hole back up forward, back up to the top. So that way we don't lose our donut hole, because that would be sad. Is that No, that's just dirt on my screen. Okay, good. So we're starting to get something vaguely donut-ish. And I feel like we need sprinkles because nothing is ever complete without sprinkles. And I think this may end up being my favorite part of this entire talk is I get to put sprinkles all over my talk. So back to sprinkles. So to get back to our sprinkles, we're going to get a, we're going to go back to this tool. What is it being done? There we go. I want a stroke of, let's go 1 point, because we want our sprinkles to be nice and visible. I want a uniform stroke. I want curved edges, and I want to start with some pink sprinkles, because pink is cute. And that's a weird sprinkle. Now we get to go make sprinkles. Oops. Tried to continue that line there. All right. Sprinkles, sprinkles everywhere. And the reason I do these by hand and I don't just like copy paste in terms of even sizes and stuff is because it's going to look a lot more natural if they're not all exactly perfect, the same size and exactly perfect, all the same. Let's pick some more sprinkles. I feel like I should throw in and actually use our brand colors a little bit. So let's do some blue sprinkles for our blue donut. Let's see if using this tool might not be a little bit nicer. So, oh. Why is it? No, that's interesting. Oh, stroke. No, bad, bad, bad. Don't want our frosting getting frosty. Although that did give me an idea once we're done with sprinkles. Okay, that's just not gonna work. Ah, much better. There we go. That's a whole lot faster. Sprinkles. Sprinkles, sprinkles, sprinkles. Okay. Let's pick a different color. So one of the things you'll notice is that we have, we've kind of lost this edge, which is kind of where our donut starts to curve, right? So we really want to try and bring that back just a little bit. So I'm going to join these two, pieces. And now what I can do, now that I have joined them, is it's going to be a whole lot easier for me to put a gradient on it to give the shape back. So to give the shape back, or to give that kind of curve back over here, I'm going to want kind of a highlighted area. So I'm going to do, bad. What? Oh, so it's wanting to do the edge because I have the edge selected. I want this guy. And then I want this guy. And then I want my gradient. And we're going to do gradient. And that is a very no good, very bad gradient. So we're going to do this because we want our gradient to be rotated from top to bottom again. Rotate. I could just type in the number. All right, we've rotated. I want it to go from here to here. We're going to add a point kind of where our curve is, right here. And now we can change our colors. So that's going to be very much blue. Over here, we want to be back to that blue. And now this part right here is where that gradient needs to be. Now this is a very harsh gradient. We don't want to be quite that harsh. Computer, there we go. Okay. Now we're going to add now if we can just make this curve. I don't know if we can make it curve. That's a very good question. I don't think I've ever tried to curve a gradient. Maybe if we do a radial. Let me try to do a radial because the radial does have a curve in it. And I can adjust if I zoom out just a tad. And we do a radial gradient. What I can do with the radial gradient, and I can adjust where. So we want the radius to be up and down. We want it to go from here to there, from here. Yeah. And then this, in theory, I can make bigger because I want my curve. Now see, I can get my curve. Yeah. Bring that. No, 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 don't spin. I feel like I'm like trying to handle a like something really long and unruly in a windstorm. And then we want to take that and get our, there we go. And now push you up. Push you up. And yeah, we're going to take you, go here, here. Now this needs to be a very similar blue, just a tad bit lighter. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to bring it and make it just a tad bit lighter. And then we can have a nice curve. I'm going to move you down just a little bit more. There we go. Extend that just a little bit. Beautiful. And so now what we have is we have that top is a little bit brighter. The edge is a little bit darker, and we have something that sunlight looks a little bit more like a donut. Now to make this even more curvy, curves are hard. I'm going to delete this piece, and then I'm going to take this piece and bring it out to make it bubble a little bit, get a slightly less perfect shape. Say this little indentation over here, that's kind of killing our effect. We're going to do the same thing over here and pull this out and basically unperfect the shape a little bit, make it a little bit more round. And now we have a donut, a very pretty donut. And we're going to save that and group this guy. All right, so I kind of promised some deck building, so we probably should get back to that a little bit now that we have some pastries to put on our deck. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and export these as PNGs because the Google Slides does not actually take a what's it called, an SVG or an AI or anything of the sort. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to say export, collect for export as multiple assets, and see we have we have 2 sprinkles that are randomly didn't get caught somewhere. And I want to, so now that I have these collected as assets, what I'm going to do is say File, Export for Screens. Not as artboard, I want my assets. I want the donut, which we're going to name donut. I want the cupcake. I think I like the baguette better than the, this is kind of a little up, I don't know, it's not coming across, so we're going to take the baguette. And we're going to export assets to my downloads folder, not to wherever that is. Download, save, choose, export. And so this is PNG at 1 time. I don't know that 1 time is what I want. I'm going to want these. I'm going to make them a little big because shrinking always works. So I'm going to say I want these at 600 pixels for my scale, and export because I can always shrink them on the actual PowerPoint presentation. So we now have, and we can totally add a cupcake here. I feel like we need a cupcake. So add image, upload from computer. Hello computer. In our downloads, we have our cupcake somewhere today. We made cupcakes. I'm gonna sort these by date added. There we go, that makes life easier. Cupcake, open. And now, see, because I can always make this smaller. I'm gonna rotate it just a tad. I'm gonna shrink it just a tad to make it comfy. Right here in our little beautiful first slide. Okay, we've made it through 1 slide. It's going to be a long deck. So now the next slide I always go to is the About Me slide. So that one I'm going to steal right out of another presentation because, and I recently updated it in, here's the 20-minute version. I want I want this one. All right, yep, I want this one. I want this one because this one got updated just recently, so I know it's up to date. Because keeping, I don't know about you all, but keeping a bio up to date is not the funnest thing in the world. And we're going to basically copy that slide. Copy. And just go plop it in here. Because I am lazy that way. Did it work? It did. Perfect. And now we go for our next slide. So one of the things I like to do when I'm structuring things is I kind of like to break my talks into almost sections, right? Where at a very high level, I look at what topics I'm going to be speaking about and kind of group them. So the first question that we're going to be asking here is, what am I building? Because, right, we're associating food or building and baking with actual making of making of an application or creating an application or developing one. So, and the first question is, what is it that we're going to be making? So at this point, what I would want to do is, if we're going to go with that food theme, is go ahead and go into my master slide, and I'm going to do edit theme. And over here, I would want to state, because I'm thinking, if we think of a standard recipe, right? If we're thinking food, what I want to do is kind of create a slide, and I'm going to create a new one. And I think I'm going to base it off of this one. I like this one because it's nice and clean. So we're going to say, we're going to take that one, we're going to copy, we're going to paste, and we're going to make our recipe slide. And for our recipe slide, I want there to be kind of, there's always a picture, there's our ingredients, and then there's our instructions. That's pretty much the 3 big things, right? So we're going to put a placeholder, oh, and the name of what it is we're cooking. All right, can't forget a title. So we're going to insert a, If I do text, but we want a placeholder for a title. And we want a placeholder, and I'll align these in just a second. I just want to get the placeholders in at the moment. So we're going to take a placeholder for the title. I'm going to add a placeholder for a body. That's going to be our, our recipe bit. We're going to add a second placeholder body text for our ingredients list. And finally, we need a placeholder for a picture. Image placeholder, and we're going to do a rectangle for our image placeholder. So we now have an image, and the reason I do our ingredients and our actual recipe. And now the reason I do these as a master slide is so that way, if I decide I don't like my alignment, or I don't like something about the slide, or maybe I want all of the slides of this type to have the same something. So over here right now, this is still from the slide deck I stole it from. So we want to update that. But I have, my Twitter handle, the name of the slide, and the slide number. I only have to do that once, and I do it on my master slide over here. And it'll propagate everywhere. And I change it once, and I make sure I'm ultra consistent about where things are positioned so that when I'm shifting from slide to slide, nothing just kind of bounces around. I just find it to be more professional and cleaner. So now we have that. So you'll see that is going to update everywhere. So now we can go back to our recipe slide. So if I take my master slide right here, I can pull down some guides. So there's my title, right? Actually, it already had guides. This is perfect. So I'm going to take my guides. That's the one I just created. We don't want that one. There you go. So see, my title is within these guides, which works perfectly. And you can see the edge here. So now if I go to the one we're creating with our recipe, I can make sure that my title, which totally doesn't, so that's not great, falls within those parameters. And I know that way that it's going to be exactly in the same spot as all of my other stuff. So if I go to one that has content, like these guys, we can see that our content boxes are coming down a little bit lower. So I'm going to take a guide. I'm going to go to these content boxes. So now I have my guide for my header and my guide for my content. And I can go back to my recipe guide. And I can see, where's my guide for my content? It did not put it on there. There's my content. I have to put it on the master one. There we go. There we go. And now I have my guide, so I know that my content is supposed to start there. This one, it needs to start there. I'm still missing the other edge, so I'm going to go ahead and add a guide to the end edge. I see that these finish over here, so I'm going to pull a guide to my end over here. As you can see, they're aligned, and it kind of automatically tells me that I'm in the right place by giving me that flash when I get there. Let's find our recipe slide again. Here we go. So now I can align myself here. We'll figure out exactly how wide we need to be for this to not be too cumbersome in just a second. And the last piece I need to know is how far down does my content kind of want to go, because I don't want to scrunch my content all the way to the bottom. That's not ideal. So go back to our recipe slide. And we're going to take, yeah, you're already pretty much on the nose. Perfect. We need to bring you down just a little bit. I kind of want this to be the same width as the content. I do want it square. So we might have to go rectangular. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go rectangular. That's okay. Nothing wrong with rectangles. And now we have a layout that every time I pick a apply layout, there's our recipe slide. I have my placeholder, and all I have to do is apply. Oh, the title is not in the right place. That's okay. All I'll have to do is go ahead and apply. So say we wanted to do upload. Let's upload Mr. Cupcake again. Let's upload Mr. Donut. I'm gonna want to shrink the donut. I'm even gonna tilt the donut. Actually, we're gonna tilt it the other way. We're gonna have it facing our content. And we're gonna shrink the donut into our box. We have a donut. Haha. And the first question we want to ask is, what are we building? Is it a donut? And then we can go ahead and start adding content as necessary, or I can just have a big image depending on the situation. But that is basically how I approach my things. Or my decks, is I will start at the beginning. I will build my guide. I will build my slide. I will build my my master, template and layouts. That way I can have that consistency, and I will think through what kind of graphics do I need. I generally break apart because as you could see, making them is time consuming and laborious and very detail oriented. So generally I'll make 1 or 2 or 3 and then go back to making, a slide or 2, and then do another graphic and then do a slide or 2, because otherwise it gets a little too bogged down, and I don't necessarily always know what I need or what I want until I get there. But then I just build out my slide, go forth, build out my slide, go forth, add graphics, and that is pretty much how I approach these. So I hope this was helpful in showing my process and how I go about putting together my slide decks. I know other people have very different techniques. So it was interesting to watch how different people approach how they go about doing theirs. But and with that, I think I'm going to go and play with some more sprinkles and play with some more various type of pastries, and hope to see you all at some point in the very near future, or same time, same place next week. Have a very good rest of your week, and talk to you all very, very soon.